A man on his deathbed says that he wished he wouldn't have been such a workaholic his whole life. He admits that he sacrificed valuable time with his family in search of what society defines as success. "I missed it," he would say. A crime scene investigator is told by the initial contact at a scene that the cause of death was suicide. Because the investigator now anticipates finding a suicide, he unconsciously collects just the evidence that supports this theory. Later, finding that this was actually a homicide, his superiors might say, "You missed it." There are reasons why warnings like, "Don't miss the forest for the trees," "Make sure you stop to smell the roses," or "You can't judge a book by its cover," have been around for ages. We miss things all the time. Most of this can be attributed to decisions that are irrational, related to a bias, or just plain indifference. Dan Ariely, award-winning professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University, points out that we all continually make irrational decisions in our personal, professional, and social lives. For example, it is not hard to find individuals who work endless hours to gain fame, wealth, and possessions. Interestingly, in a recent poll, spending time with family was rated as a top contributor to a person's happiness. Unfortunately, as other research has concluded, the most reported regrets from individuals who were nearing death revolve around not having spent enough time with family and friends. And yet, most people choose to ignore all of this information and engage in behaviors that make them unhappy, like working too much. Do you see the irrational nature of these choices? There are many other ways in which we fool ourselves and make choices that are not correctly reasoned. For example, during an election season, people tend to seek out positive information that paints their favored candidates in a good light, while looking for information that casts the opposing candidate negatively. This is called a confirmation bias, which is basically the favoring of information that confirms existing beliefs. If we believe the answer is no, then we block out all other evidence that might lead to yes. This also plays out in science, where in the context of research, biases can sustain theories or programs in the face of inadequate or even contradictory evidence. Studies out of Stanford University suggest that, even in the most stringent research designs, bias seems to be a major problem. This research concludes that even scientists miss it more often than not. The same is true in medical research, where there have been identified over 30 different types of biases that can negatively influence decision-making during experimental studies. If this can happen to them, isn't it possible that it can happen to you? Even in decisions in your personal life? Think about it. While we like to imagine that our worldviews are rational, logical, and objective, the fact is that our beliefs are often based on paying attention to the information that upholds our ideas and desires, while ignoring the facts that challenge these views. As the great scientist and philosopher Blaise Pascal states, people almost invariably arrive at their beliefs not on the basis of proof, but on the basis of what they find attractive. Do you think this is a rational way of living a life? Another area that greatly influences our choices is indifference, the state of having little or no concern for something. An example of this would be seeing someone in need and not caring what happens to them. But how important is indifference? Nobel Prize-winning professor and activist Elie Wiesel states that the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. George Bernard Shaw agrees when he says, "The worst sin towards our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity." Yes, indifference is a choice, and we all select this course of inaction for many areas of our lives, even the most critical, like seeking and following God. Not endeavoring to even try to discover the one who created you is an example of indifference of the highest order. This is what the purpose of these videos and related content is all about. Don't sleepwalk through life accepting the decisions you made because you fooled yourself, are prioritizing your desires over truth, or have fallen into a deep state of indifference about what is most important. The key is to understand why you make the decisions you do. Resist irrationality, bias, and indifference, and choose to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Decide to think critically about what you have been told and what you believe. Above all, choose to seek and don't miss this.